Okay, so part of this project is getting this swim deck completely redone. Not only is it going to have marine mat on it for the basic flooring part, we're going to replace this teak. You can look, this teak is as old as the boat is, so close to 40 years old, and it needs to be redone every year. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to pull all this teak off and we're going to replace it with Starboard. Now Starboard is how do I want to say it? It's almost like a plastic board. There's Starboard and there's Starboard Light. Light is more porous, so if you're going to have open seams, like if you're building a lure station or something like that, and you have open seams, it's going to show. But in this application, where my seams are hidden down below the line, it's going to be below flush. You can go with Starboard Light or other applications like that. I ended up going with regular Starboard. I mean, I say all that and then I say I went with the regular Starboard, but I went with the regular Starboard just because it is a little heavier and because this is obviously load bearing back here on the swim platform at certain times. That's why I went with it. It's 1/2 inch thick, and we're going to cut that all out now, and we're going to replace all that. And then we're also going to replace these teak ladder steps on both the lower and upper ladder. So that's going to be in the works right now. Another part of the whole beautification project.
Okay, everybody, so you can see Brian here going to town on the old teak removal here. You can see right there he's saving the old hardware, which is a good idea. You never know if you're going to be able to reuse it, and we all know stainless steel is not cheap right now. So again, we're going with Starboard as replacement for this old teak. I found mine at boatoutfitters.com, but there's a lot of other places out there that you can find it, and just judging on your color, there's a few different color options available. You'll see a little later in the video here that I actually went with a little bit darker, almost like a little darker white composition. But yeah, you'll see that here shortly when we start installing this. Okay, so now we've gone and taken the old teak off the boat, and we've measured up what we're going to need for each individual section. You could see back, excuse me, in the original shots there that there's three different sections on the swim platform, and each one, well, 2 of them had same dimensions, but one was different than the other 2. And then, of course, we had to measure out the dimensions for the steps also. So when you order Starboard, you can actually order it in large sheets. So if you know your measurements and you can figure out the volume that you're going to need, you can order it all in one sheet, or you can order it pre-cut into the dimensions that you want. But we went ahead and ordered it in the larger volumes. It's a little cheaper that way. I'm going to pre-warn you right now, Starboard, just like any other building material out there right now, is not cheap. You're going to pay for it, but we needed to get this done, so I went ahead and paid the extra pennies for it just so we could have this done for this upcoming season. But you can see here in the video that the stuff cuts very easily, really, with a table saw, radial arm saw, chop saw, miter saw, whatever you want. It'll cut it pretty easy. It also routers very easily, and also sands really easily. You can make it look really, really nice. So Brian right now has cut out the majority of the pieces for the fit. He's going to go ahead and mark these off, and then he's going to sand them down, and then we're going to start getting them ready to router for the final shape, and then the install. It's coming along real nice. Okay, so now Brian is running the Starboard along the router to get the edges that we want. It cleans up pretty well on a router, like I said already. It doesn't really chip hard or really take huge gouges, if you get too quick on it. It's pretty usable stuff. But one thing we did find was, obviously, like with a lot of other material like this, when you get done routering, you have to do this right here. You got to take a hand sander or some sandpaper and go along and clean up those edges just to make sure everything looks real nice. But with a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, you can get this stuff to come out really, really nice looking. It definitely can spruce up a boat. You can make anything out of the Starboard from the project we're doing here, which is the swim platform. A lot of people make new lure stations out of this. Actually, I've seen a lot of the custom lure stations made exactly out of this material, and they can come out really, really nice. I've also seen Starboards installed on the inner gunnels of the boat to hold like planer boards and divers and things like that. So pretty versatile stuff. If you've never used it before and you have some projects on the boat that you're thinking about that you might want to make out of wood, you might want to consider looking at Starboard also. It can really make a boat look nice and clean. Now we're going to begin the install back onto the boat, and the first thing you can see we're doing here is we're putting a bead of 3M 5200 Marine Sealant down along the edges. If you've ever used 5200 Marine Sealant, you know what this stuff is like. It is a lifetime bond and very, very difficult to break. But I'm going to tell you something right now. I made an error right here in the way that I installed this, and I'll tell you exactly what happened. You'll see as we go on how I install this, and as we do that, I'll tell you exactly what the error was. So now you see we're starting to lay down the pieces themselves. You can see that they're routed nicely along the edges and rounded on the edges as well. They came out looking really, really nice. The color of this is actually, I believe it's called buckskin. That's one of the colors that Starboard puts out, but you can see what we're doing here. We've laid the piece down. Brian's going to apply pressure from above while I'm screwing in the stainless steel screws from below, and that's the way it was done previously. All the screws were from the bottom up into the material. Now, I never thought in a million years that after applying 5200 sealant to these pieces, as well as there was 100 or more screws in total throughout this whole project holding these pieces in. I never would have thought in 100 years that any of these pieces would have broken out, but I was wrong, and I paid the price for it last weekend when I was in a tournament, and I had to wade out. We had about 3 to 4 foot waves coming in, and I had to wade out in the big lake with those waves crashing on the back of the boat for all the boats to be moved back into port. Those waves, my boat going up and down, and that swim platform slamming down onto those waves, dislodged one piece out of each section. So I have 3 different sections here, and one piece got knocked out of each one. So I am now missing 3 pieces on the back of my boat. Shame on me. I should have done this differently. Thinking back on it, the way that I should have done this was to screw holes down from the top. Put a nice countersink in, put a stainless steel bolt down through, and a lock washer and a nut on the bottom, and along with the 5200. That is the way that I'm actually going to redo this over this summer. And now that I know that there's an issue, and now that you know also, if you do this project, you may want to consider doing it that way also. Live and learn from my mistakes. I lost probably $50 worth of material somewhere out there in Lake Michigan. If anybody finds it, please return it to me. I would love to have it back. I'm sure it's washed up on shore someplace. But yeah, definitely I would do this differently. I am going to do this differently. So anyway, you can see as we're continuing here, we're just starting to get the screws up into the material as Brian holds it down. Be real careful. I'll mention this also. Be real careful using, if you are going to use this technique from bottom up, screwing screws from the bottom up. Be real careful that you get the right size screws. If you get any that are just a tad too long, they'll actually make a dimple on the top side of that on the visible side of that starboard. So be careful with that also. But yeah, it's coming along nicely. Other than my error on the way that we installed it, I was really, really happy with the way this came out. So let's take a look how this install goes. Okay, so let's take a look here at the final product. Looking over the back of the boat, you can see it all installed there, the swim platform, the steps. I love the color. I love the way it looks. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to replace a couple of those, but hey, that's the way it goes. Thanks for coming along on the journey. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them for you. We'll see you on the next one.